If you can take a woman, if you can take the feminine out of her consciousness, out of her heart, out of her intuitive capabilities and her intuitive powers for how to shift dynamics and make situations work for everyone, or to get people's needs met without conflict, then guess what gets to happen? Exactly what's been happening on the planet for centuries, right? This is essentially what Jesus came here to teach us, is love thy neighbor as you love thyself. Meaning we are not separate from one another. We are not supposed to be at war with one another.
Hey, soul family. Welcome to the Alive and Awake podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kay, and I have spent the last 20 years teaching people how to work with their wounds and overcome their greatest fears so they can learn how to thrive in a world where they were only taught to conform. Each week, we will dive deep into the practical, the spiritual, and the mystical, so I can teach you how to do the inner work to know yourself, trust yourself, and eventually love yourself enough to create a world where you feel fully alive, awake, and free. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode. Ready? Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode, everyone. I have a little bit of resistance coming in because I'm not sure how this information is going to flow out today. But Spirit gave me a direct message of what I feel called to share and what I am supposed to talk about and riff about today on this episode. So it's a deep one. And so put on your warrior hat because we are going to be going into the trenches of the darkness in our minds and the war that we have on our feminine consciousness. I have been doing so much work on myself to understand the dark forces within me, the dark feminine within me, and the energy that really overtakes us as women that we tend to shame and judge and blame. But what we don't understand as women is that we are moving this energy through our body that is very archetypal, meaning it is an energy where we are like collapsing timelines from all of the wounding of our past lives and all of the things that we've been carrying as a feminine consciousness into human form. We are transmuting and alchemizing in our body. And so we feel like we are at war within ourselves. And that is presenting as like war with others or war with our reality or the energy that we're living in on the planet at this time. And so today we're going to dive in to help you understand what that is and how to work with that energy so that it doesn't overtake you and that you can always know that the work is to tune back into divine love and connection and our feminine essence. Because when we tune back into our creative source, when we tune back into love, when we reconnect with our heart, that energy cannot have a grip and cannot have a hold on us because we're no longer forced and catapulted into our masculine side of our energy. So let me tell you how this came into existence and why I knew I needed to talk about this today. So I've been doing a 5-day fast, and fasting is so good for like clearing out the body, for detoxing, for really getting you in tune with your own intuition and your own inner spirit, and really a direct connection, with source that's incredibly powerful. And last night, and Spirit's been waking me up randomly, like throughout the night. Side note, it's such a crazy thing to think about that we are actually getting to a place, or our bodies are being prepared to come to a place where we can actually survive energetically without as much food, and that the food and the things that we're putting into our body is actually separating us from our connection with source, because a lot of the things that we're consuming is so toxic for the body and causes inflammation and causes all of our chakra centers to feel blocked and condensed. So completely side note, which we'll talk about at another time, but this is how Jesus could survive in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights without food or water, because he was directly connected to the manna or the bread or the food of spirit that was fulfilling all of his energetic needs at that time because he was directly connected to source. However, for today's podcast, I want to talk about what spirit woke me up with at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I was having this dream, and in this dream, what was occurring was I was arguing with my ex about not wanting to pay for childcare on Thursday nights. Like he was like refusing to it. He's like, he doesn't need it. I don't care if you need it. Like, I'm not paying for it anymore. And in my mind, I was having this argument of like, what do you mean you're not paying for it? It's in the court papers that you're supposed to pay for it. And if you don't pay for it on Thursday nights, then I can't work. I can't do what I need to do. And all this argument started happening in my head. And when I woke up, I got the download of, oh, I'm supposed to talk about the war that's happening in our brains or in our consciousness that looks like we're actually at war with another outside of us, and that is our enemy, but it's not. The war is actually on our femininity and on our ability to be intuitive and to tune in to trust and love and surrender and not see anybody outside of us as our adversary, right? So the adversary is actually within us. So there is an energy on the planet that most people don't understand. And it is, like in Star Wars, considered like the dark forces. Like that is very, very, very real. And, anything that we tend to see like on the movies is actually like true in the spirit realm, which blows my mind when I really tune into that and I think about like what's happening in like mainstream media and movies and things like that, because we are at war, a spiritual war going on in our bodies that is now represented here on the earth plane. And so some people refer to that darkness energy as like nefarious forces or reptilian energetics, or in the Bible, Jesus calls it the enemy or the adversary or the adversarial voice or the devil, Satan, like all of that is what it refers to. But what happens is that this energy, that's a very low level vibrational energy. And when you're entrapped in it, it actually robs you of your feminine essence and your true energy, your true self, like to be in alignment with love and trust and joy and bliss. It takes us out of alignment with that and it puts us into hate, anger, rage, and all of the things that we start to feel within us. Even judgment is the same. And so, what this energy does is it infiltrates our mind and it comes in through our inner child wounding. And because all of us on the planet have experienced some type of wounding as a child, it can play off of that wounding and it can use the wounds that we have or unprocessed, unhealed emotion to project that wound onto another or to turn in against ourself. And so if you want to call it the inner attacker or the inner shamer or the adversarial voice, you have to give it a name because it is not you. The real you, the true you, is always in alignment with like love, and it is always in alignment with seeing the bigger, broader picture of things and how they play out. Right now, the war is in my head clearly because it's in my dream state. And often this happens throughout the day where I have to remind myself, like, there's no current war with this person. Everything has been resolved, right? I've forgiven him. I've done my work. I've done a lot of trauma processing. I've done all of the work. And so how I know that this is the inner adversary is because it wants to pull me out of alignment with trust, right? Fully trusting that everything is exactly the way that it needs to be in human form and that nothing is wrong with the way that my life turned out, the way that my son's life turned out, the way that my business is turning out, anything. Like it will go to war to make you start to critique things and start to make you believe that someone should be different or that this shouldn't be happening in my life or like this isn't okay. And so when you start to notice these sentences going on, what you're actually noticing is that you're under an adversarial attack. There is an energy attacking your consciousness because it wants to make you fight, either fight against someone else or fight against yourself. And so the way that it looks when it fights against yourself is, let's just say, like, you fall off of a diet, or you have drinks, or you don't go to the gym, or you yell at your kid, or you do something that you feel is an energetic mismatch. It wants to come in and shame you and make you judge yourself. And then you go into this spiral, which takes you out of alignment with self love and compassion and grace for this human experience that you're having and this life that you're living, that you get to explore all facets of emotion and energy and things that we do as human beings. And it has a really strategic way of coming in and hijacking you. Right. So when you feel like it almost feels like it's a possession. And what it does is it rides off of something called your negative animus. And so the negative animus is the masculine energy inside the feminine. And what it does is it hijacks this archetypal energy within us. It hijacks our divine masculine side, and then it radically shifts us into our masculine. And we become so disconnected from our feminine and from our heart that we start to get into this place of almost like self-righteousness of, I'm right, this person's wrong. Like, they're not sovereign beings. They should be acting this way. They should be doing things this way. Like, if only they would be different, then my life would be easier, or whatever. So what it does is it really wants you to go to war with the external masculine because you haven't healed all the wounds within your own consciousness with your own masculine wounding and with the heavenly Father, which we'll certainly get into and we'll talk about in a bit. But essentially, what you need to understand is that this energy that is making you war against yourself or making you war against another is not you. It is not divine. It is not feminine. And it is meant to strategically hijack you and take you out of alignment with your feminine essence, right? Because when you're not hijacked by this energy, you actually have the ability to pause and you can use your feminine essence, which is to see all sides of a situation. Like, we have an incredible intuitive ability to see one part or one piece of a situation and associate that with all other dynamics that are going around and influencing the situation. The masculine doesn't have the ability to do this. The masculine is in their primary thinking brain. And so they're very black and white. It's either this or it's that. It's this way or it's that way. It's, there's no room for empathy. And it's very interesting that we have been forced into a predominantly masculine society and that every system on the planet right now is developed by masculine consciousness. Our school system, our court system, our medical system, like, all of it is very like black and white, black and white. It's this way or that way. It's this or that. And it doesn't have the feminine essence in it that, like, for instance, what's coming up to me right now is my son in a school system, right? So our school system is designed to essentially make kids sit for long hours of the day and be able to absorb all of this information. And their brains are not made to do that. They're meant to be active. And so much science and research shows that when they're creative and they're imagining and they're using like higher level learning and they're out in nature and they're moving, they actually can retain and process information and their brain develops exponentially faster. But because we're in a masculine dominated school system that's based on control and obedience and dominance, it actually takes us out of intuitive creation and individuality and authenticity. And so we are coming into a generation where kids are actually meant to break apart that system. many systems that we actually have. The younger generations are coming in to disrupt, and that's why they're not following the orders the way that we used to do, because they don't believe in obedience. They believe in sovereignty, and they're calling out what is wrong with the systems that we have on the planet right now. But back to my story is that, like, how you're in your feminine essence is because you can see all sides and you can see all parts to a problem. So, for instance, my son, we had an issue the other day with his homework, and he wrote down what his homework was, and I had a question about it. And I had asked the teacher on the app, like, hey, can you clarify exactly what the homework is? There's some confusion around what he's supposed to do. And so he did clarify it for me. But the next day in school, he actually came down on my son and said, if you have confusion about what's written on the board and you're not writing it in the exact way that it's written, then you should be excused from recess. Because if you can't follow simple directions, then you don't deserve to have recess today. Now, I will tell you, Mama Bear, like, rage wanted to come out of me and attack this teacher. And so I knew that I was under an internal attack, because the feminine doesn't want to attack in that way. But long story short, I could see how it all played out. And in my opinion, like, when you take a kid who has ADHD, who needs a ton of direction, and you tell him that his standard is supposed to be the same as every other kid in that classroom, and you're not working with his IEP and you're not giving him enough time, and that you're rushing him, then you should not be teaching my child. Anyways, I had to really be able to look at all of the dynamics about what's going on, because I can understand on a very human level, one, because I'm connected to my son and I'm connected to every other human being on the planet through my intuitive powers and heart, that this situation is not serving him for how his brain works and for what he needs. And so there will be a meeting. But instead of going into that meeting with war, I'm using that to tune into my feminine side of how can we set him up for success with what your expectations are in the classroom and what his diagnosis is. Because I'm seeing a discrepancy from what you're actually asking him to do and what he's actually capable of. And what happens is that when we're in our feminine, we can use that to problem solve. We can use that to see all sides of a problem or all sides of an equation. And we no longer want to create war. We want to create harmony. We want to come back into a balance. We want to come back into equilibrium. And we have the power to do that when we're standing in our essence, and when we're actually using our feminine energy and not our wounded masculine energy that only creates more destruction. So the adversarial voice wants to shift us out of our feminine, catapult us into our masculine, where we want to essentially have conflict. And that is a very strategic plan by the nefarious forces and reptilian energetics on the planet. Right? So if you can take a woman, if you can take the feminine out of her consciousness, out of her heart, out of her intuitive capabilities and her intuitive powers for how to shift dynamics and make situations work for everyone, or to get people's needs met without conflict, then guess what gets to happen? Exactly what's been happening on the planet for centuries, right? This is essentially what Jesus came here to teach us, is love thy neighbor as you love thyself, meaning we are not separate from one another. We are not supposed to be at war with one another. That is so ancient and foreign, and, like, I don't even want to use a negative word, but either way, you can see the dynamic. When the feminine is shifted out of her power, the planet looks like it does right now, right? We are at war with each other. We don't respect each other for each other's differences. We don't respect each other for the choices that we're making, as sovereign divine beings. Like, it's all being disrupted because it is the rise of the feminine consciousness that is going to get us back into alignment with higher level understanding, with 5D reality, which is we are all one. We are not supposed to be at war with each other. The only reason we're at war with each other is because the feminine has been taken off of her pedestal and has been subservient to the masculine energy, which was what the dark energy on this planet wanted to do. So it's won for a very, very long time, right? If you take the woman out of the equation and you make her less than to the masculine, what happens? This is what happens, right? We're warring against each other. We're warring against ourselves. We're warring against everything, not trusting our feelings, not trusting each other, competing with each other. Like all this shit is happening because we have been taken out of alignment. And so, what's been being shown to me and what's been being taught to me is that when the feminine consciousness gets to rise and she comes back into alignment, where we actually were positioned to be like gods and goddesses and high priestesses and the empress next to the masculine, where there's sacred union of both energies, whether that's in a partnership or whether that's internally within inside of you, then it can balance the equilibrium on the planet and the dark energy can no longer exist. So what was shown is that as we rise in our consciousness as women and we stop the war within ourselves and we stop the war without projecting onto others, the level of consciousness is going to be so high that the darkness is absorbed and then it gets to leave the earth plane. So we are in the mix of that right now. That is why everything is being disrupted. Everything is being overturned and questioned. And you're seeing things that are happening as far as like, the P. Diddy scandal that's being exposed and actually aired on media for once, where this stuff has been happening on the planet for so long. I can't even tell you how many survivors I've worked with from satanic and ritualistic abuse and like sex trafficking and all the underground stuff that's going on in our government and our planet. Like it is real. And I have had firsthand clients that I have helped heal through the darkness that exists on this planet. But we don't fight darkness with darkness. We fight darkness with love. And that comes with learning to tap into the love of source and the love that we have within our hearts with ourselves first. So when you notice this energy coming in and hijacking your consciousness by essentially like having a battle in your mind about someone else or about something you did or something that you're unhappy with within yourself, you notice it attacking you. You don't need to have a conversation with that energy because you will not win. Its whole primary goal is to keep you shaming you and shaming you and shaming you. And it's not your ego because your ego wants to protect you. So you'll know that if it's a wounded part of yourself, when you tune into it and you say, okay, is this to protect me? And if the answer is yes, then you know it's a part of you that you can work with. But if you keep getting like, well, I'm not going to shame myself because I ate that pizza last night, right? I'm allowed to eat the pizza. I'm a sovereign being, whatever. But the adversarial voice comes in and says, yeah, but you're overweight and your pants don't fit. And if you wouldn't eat the pizza, then people would actually love you and you wouldn't be rejected and you would be prettier and you would be thinner and you would be blah, 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 blah. And it just keeps feeding more negativity, then you know that you're under an adversarial attack. And the way to work with that is to say, no, like you do not get to infiltrate me. I am not going to war with myself. I'm allowed to eat pizza if I want to freaking eat pizza. Because you know what? It felt good to me last night and I believe in myself and I trust in myself and I know that I'm fully capable of having a healthy body and having healthy energy. And I know what to do to get myself back into alignment. So I ate that pizza with freaking joy and with love and I'm not going to let you shame me for it. Because the shame and the judgment comes from old wounding that we all have in our bodies as women. And this energy feeds on that and it picks up on that and it makes you want to not only turn against yourself, turn away from God and turn away from people that you love and attack them and criticize them. Like you have to like fight the war within you and say, no, I know better. I know that I am the conscious creator of my life, and I get to decide how I feel about myself in any situation because my belief is more powerful than anything on the planet. Because you, dear one, are directly connected to source creation through your heart and through your womb space. You are made out of the particles of God, out of the molecules and out of the substance of the creator of the universe. And that's how much power you have. And this energy knows that. And it wants to take you out of your power. It wants to take you out of alignment so that you don't fulfill your purpose, so that you don't become more connected to source, so that you don't bring more love and light energy onto the planet, so that you continue to feed the energy of hate, of judgment, of rage, of war, of all of that. And it takes you off of your center. So you have to say, stop. No, like you don't get a vote. I get to decide how I feel about how I ate that pizza last night. Or I get to decide how to have a conversation with my ex if he wants to take Thursday nights away and doesn't want to pay for them, right? I'm in my power when I'm able to see all sides and how to work with each player in the game. And I show up in my true feminine essence as the problem solver that sees all sides in my heart and in my empathy, but yes, still doesn't take bullshit and is firm and is kind and is loving and is able to say no when I need to say no and yes when it's a full body yes. So this is actually what Jesus was coming to teach us. What we also have not been taught and what's been like taken out of scripture is that yes, there were 12 disciples that were masculine, but there was also 12 disciples that were feminine. And Mary Magdalene being the first disciple, the first feminine disciple who was closest to Jesus, who could read and interpret spirit, who did have as much power as him in human form, who could perform miraculous healings through her own intuition power to cast out demonic energy and to cast out this adversarial voice that takes root in our DNA and in our consciousness to bring us back into alignment with our true essence. And so a lot of this has been like written out of history because the masculine at that time wasn't ready for a woman to be a teacher or a preacher or a healer, right? Like they had witch hunts because you can see how this energy wanted to destroy feminine consciousness. That's what its agenda was. And it won, but we are learning more and we are knowing better. So the more you can choose to work on yourself and understand your trauma and understand your karma and understand how this voice wants to attack you and judge you and make you shame yourself or judge yourself or shame another or judge another, the more power you will have to stand up against it when it wants to hijack your brain and make you go to war within yourself or with another. So this is one of the things that I absolutely love to talk about. I'm actually currently developing an online course to really rise into your positive warrior as the woman, the war on your worth, the war on your consciousness, the war within your soul. So watch for that to come out by the end of the year, just finalizing some things. Make sure that you tune into this, that you hit the like button, that you subscribe, or that you leave a comment. If there are things that you would like me to talk about a little bit more that resonated with you, please let me know. I'm happy to riff on anything that you're struggling with internally that you need more clarification on. And I highly encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter where I get to dive into this a little bit more in depth because my email list is not as censored as other platforms. And I am really happy and appreciative that you resonate with this, that you continue to listen, and that you are in full supportive of my own unique mission here on earth. I love you and I wish you the highest most expansive rest of your year and continue to tune in. And I will gladly listen to what it is that you are ready to receive.